Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a big show lined up for you. Let's get right on into it. All right, yeah, insult to injury for the Vols. I've been telling you we've been getting disrespected left and right. And we're also going to talk about Connor Stalions. The Michigan fans are claiming that he made no difference at all. We're going to talk about that.
Believe that.
Now to the blatant disrespect of the Vols. They've just announced the kickoff time for us with our first ball game, which is against Syracuse, which is a darn good team. They were good last year. They had 10 wins, same as we did. Now, you would think a playoff team playing against a 10-win Syracuse team that you'd get a primetime spot. But nope, Tennessee versus Syracuse season opener gets worst kickoff time possible. Yep, noon, a 12 p.m. kickoff time. Now, everybody knows prime time is between 7 and 8 p.m. That's when all the big programs are on TV. That's when people like to watch. Noon is not a lot of fun. Honestly, the only time I want to play noon is when I'm playing on the road against a really good team and we get lucky and get to play them at noon because their crowd's not going to be all fired up and juiced up, if you know what I mean.
You fellas been doing a bit of boozing, have you? Sucking back on Grandpa's old cough medicine?
No, oh no, sir. No.
So this being at a neutral site, which will be Atlanta, we're playing Syracuse. That's no bueno. It also stinks for anybody that lives in the middle of the country or on the West Coast that's a Tennessee fan or a Syracuse fan, because now it's a 9 a.m. kickoff. So it's not great for a lot of folks that are Tennessee fans. And I don't like an early game. But neither team has a big marquee quarterback right now. And I can go ahead and tell you that plays a role when it comes to when they put your game times. You know, we've got the Joey Aguilar and Nico's gone to UCLA. And then Syracuse, they've got the Angeli kid who was a third-string dude at Notre Dame. So there's no big marquee quarterback for either team, even though both teams won 10 games last year. And it talks about the fact that traveling is going to be a pain, you know, with it being in Atlanta, not being at home. And you also have Texas and Ohio State. They're at noon as well, which is very odd. Why does Ohio State play so many noon games? Especially playing Texas. That ought to be a 7 o'clock game, you would think, or at least 3:30. And, you know, they play Michigan at noon every year. Now, I understand that because that's like at the end of the year and it's cold as crap up there. So that makes sense they would play at noon, even though I'd love for that game to be at 7 p.m. Although, given the amount of angst between those two teams, it's probably best they play at noon because that way the two fan bases don't have time to get all fired up. And that would be a problem because I've never seen two teams dislike each other like this. I mean, I thought Auburn and Alabama was bad, and it is. Ohio State, Michigan's on a whole nother level. It's Hatfield-McCoy times 10. And here's your big games. Alabama's playing Florida State at 3:30, then LSU at Clemson, 7:30. So LSU and Clemson's the prime time. And Alabama at Florida State, boy, that tells you. You know, Florida State only won 2 games last year, and I'm not ripping on them. But you would think that'd be a game you'd put at noon. But like I say, if you don't have the marquee QBs, that's the thing we've been dealing with at Tennessee. First, we're kicked out of the top 25 on ESPN. We're put on the dishonorable list for quarterbacks. They ranked the quarterbacks 1 to 50. Aguilar got ranked 50th. And now we're at noon for our kickoff. And it's funny, the national media was praising us. Oh, you stood up to Nico. Yeah, that's great. Everybody's loving it. And then as soon as that story ends, it's off the top 25. It's on the dishonorable list. It's this, it's that. Though they turn on you quick. And here it talks about a lot of the Vol supporters. They're voicing their displeasure online. Obviously, nothing can be done about it. So anyway, the hits keep on coming. Now let's talk a little bit about this Connor Stalions thing. I have been taking a lot of grief from the Michigan fans. They're wearing me out. They don't like me talking about Connor and the cheating scandal and all that crap that went on up there. And I get it. But this nonsense that it made no difference what Connor did. And I love the comments of, well, you still got to play the game. You still got to throw the ball, catch the ball, tackle the player. You still got to do all those things even if you know the signs or any of that kind of crap. Really? You don't think it has any impact at all? Well, let me show you this. You remember a little team called TCU? Yeah, TCU was playing Michigan in the playoff. They had somehow squeaked through that season, barely winning in a fairly easy conference, and somehow got in the top 4. And they wound up playing Michigan. And everybody thought Michigan would just wear them out. Well, it turns out TCU got tipped off in 2023 that Michigan steals signs. And they were warned, you'd better switch your signs or you're going to be in trouble. So TCU made a few changes.
But did the NCAA reach out to you or TCU about that and how you handled that preparation against what was going on there at the time?
No, not that I'm aware of. They certainly haven't reached out to me, and I'm not aware if they've reached out to anybody else on our staff. But, I think that it sounds to me like they've done a pretty thorough investigation of everything, and it sounds to me like they've come to some conclusions and are getting ready to share them with us all. And it was definitely an interesting, definitely an interesting time. We were preparing for Michigan. We had a long time to prepare for them, and as we got started, you know how it is. You call people that at some of the schools that they played, and everybody kind of kept saying, "Hey, watch the signals and be careful with this." And you hear that from people, and often you hear that from people that lost a game as kind of an excuse. And I think we treated it that way at first a little bit, and then I think as we started to hear it more and more and started to dive into it a little bit, it seemed pretty obvious maybe that something was going on, but we had no idea what or to what extent. I think stealing signals is pretty common in college football, but I think that Michigan took it to a different level is what it sounds like to me, and certainly what we heard. And so we made a couple of changes. Wasn't anything earth shattering. Made some changes to kind of protect our offense and defense, from them, and as we played in that semifinal game. And I think it certainly helped us. And I don't know that we would have been able to win that game had we not gotten some of that information.
So, I mean, and it could be as simple as just having a dummy call or a dummy sign. And was there a play that comes to mind where you knew you got them on a sign that they thought a play was coming, but it really wasn't that play?
Oh, I can't think of anything specific, but there was some times where, we got into a formation and we checked, did a check with me on the sideline and signaled in a dummy call, and they signaled in a call. And we didn't change the call to the signal. And I think that there was the assumption maybe that it had been, or it certainly looked that way.
Right.
It's speculation on my part, but one or two, I think, plays in the ball game probably resulted from that. Again, it's hard to say that for sure, but I think we can speculate that way.
And one or two plays is about, one or two of the 5 or 6 that determine a football game.
Yeah. Well, very, very smart by you and your coaching staff. I am curious, though, and we don't know this and we haven't read the notice of allegation, but we're seeing some reports coming out of it. If it comes out that, and you mentioned this was a little bit above and beyond as opposed to what you see with normal sign stealing in college football, if in some way it's released that other programs believe they were affected, teams that Michigan was not even playing, but were going to be affected positively by if they lost in the playoff race, how much worse do you think that is from a coaching standpoint?
Oh, I think it's like anything. I mean, look, we have so much on our plates right now that we have to kind of move on. I think we all know that things happen sometimes in college football that maybe we're not comfortable with, and you hope at some point that it's taken seriously and investigated, and you hope at some point that if they decide to punish a school, and I'm not talking about Michigan specifically, any school really for that matter, that it has teeth, just to encourage people to not do it. And I think that's been probably part of our biggest issue in college football has been when we found programs guilty of violations, that there really hasn't been anything that's encouraged them significantly enough not to do those violations or commit those violations again. And so you just hope that at some point, whether, like I said, it's Michigan or whomever, that finds some wrongdoing within the program, that there's something with teeth to encourage programs to do things the right way.
Yeah, and that last question was very important. That was clearly him asking, hey, have you heard anything about possibly Michigan sending signs and signals to other teams to knock people out of their way for the playoff? That was what he was referring to, the Tennessee-Clemson thing. And obviously, it made a huge impact because TCU won that ball game, and nobody expected them to win. Nobody. And let's see how they did after that game, TCU that is, against Georgia. Yeah, right here, folks, 65-7. It was the worst loss in the history of the championship game. And TCU really shouldn't have been in that game, but they had an advantage. And I know it sounds like I'm ripping on TCU. They were a fine program. It's just they weren't a top 4 team. And Georgia kind of proved that out. They'd have never beat Michigan had they not known that they were still on their signs and reversed them. So every time Michigan thought they were going to run the ball, they passed it, and vice versa.
Pull the old switcheroo.
And every time they thought TCU was going to be in a certain design defense-wise, they would reverse that. So they had Michigan totally confused. I'll bet Connor Stalions in the second half was pulling his hair out, going crazy. I'm sure Jim Harbaugh was like looking at him going, hey, you are our savior. What's happening? Don't you know what they're doing? He's like, well, I'm doing exactly what I should be doing. It's not working. That's because they knew what you were up to. Somebody had tipped them off. Well, I'll bet Josh Heupel wishes he would have known that South Carolina probably had their signs and signals, and he could have reversed them.
Once again, things that could have been brought to my attention yesterday.
That might have been useful information when they played South Carolina and they knocked us out of the playoff race. Absolutely. So for the Michigan fans that are complaining and coming at me on social media, look, it made a huge impact. You lost that game because of that. That's just a fact. And you won a lot of games because of it for 3 years.
In my opinion, allegedly.
Anyway, Tennessee, look, we're going to be disrespected for a long time. That's just the way it is all year this year. Joey needs to play well, and I tell you, it's going to be a heck of a motivating factor for the Vols. Josh Heupel ought to be loving this because he doesn't need anything more to get them motivated. The more this crap keeps piling on, he's going to be able to go to them and say, nobody thinks you can do anything. They've knocked you out of the top 25. Everybody thinks you can't beat anybody. Putting you at noon games, and that'll get them motivated. Sometimes you need that. What you don't want is your team getting praised preseason. That's actually the worst thing that can happen.
It's like poison. You know what I mean? It's like taking poison, like rat poison.
Yeah, Nick Saban hated that. Absolutely hated it. He thought that was the worst thing you can do to a team is praise them. Well, that's definitely something we won't have to worry about at Tennessee this year because once they were done praising us because we didn't give in to Nico's demands, that was it. From this point forward, it's, they're no good anymore. They don't have a big-time quarterback. And Joey's as motivated as anybody could be, I'm sure, and probably Jake Merklinger, too. I'm sure he's over there chomping at the bit. So anyway, did want to show you those things. Yeah, Connor, you definitely made a difference. That ought to make you feel good. And Michigan fans, hush. The hammer's coming. It's coming. It's the way it is. And if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Lets me know to continue to cover all these big college sports stories. And if you hadn't subscribed, boom, 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 hit that little button right there. It won't cost you a dime. Help you get my videos. And right over here's the most recent video. YouTube, thanks, you'll enjoy. We'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.
Murdoch. I'm coming to get you.